Now, so the first chapter that we dealt is ray optics, and then we dealt with wave optics. Before this, the chapter that we had is electromagnetic waves. So if you observe the electromagnetic spectrum, right, in electromagnetic spectrum, visible light was a part of it, about which we concentrated mainly in ray optics and wave optics, right? So that is why we were concentrating on. So in these two chapters, in ray optics and wave optics, did we deal them like a particle or a wave? So the question is, did we deal light as a particle or a wave in the case of ray optics and wave optics?
Wave.
In both the cases, we told that light is a wave, because that is the basic that comes from electromagnetic waves. So just because just by saying it is not accepted, there are certain phenomena that we observe where we could see that light exhibited wave properties. So what were the phenomena that prove the wave nature of light? We saw it in the previous chapter, that is interference, diffraction. Then there is something called as polarization also. Okay, this polarization is not the same as what happens in a capacitor. This is completely different. It has something to do with light. Okay. So these were the phenomena where we tend to say that light has a wave nature associated with it. Then came a confusion. Then there came a new phenomenon which is called photoelectric effect. So everybody knows this, what photoelectric effect is. Right. So you know it, right? Photoelectric. Photo refers to the photons, electric refers to charges, and it's an effect, where the phenomenon where you can see something. Right. So when this photoelectric effect concept came, the wave theory of light did not support the concept of photoelectric effect. This is where the confusion started. Okay, because till now we were saying that light had only wave nature. People started concluding that light had only wave nature. But this concept came and raised another question. If it had wave nature, why is wave property not able to explain photoelectric effect? Okay. It is then when these topics were combined together, it was understood that light had dual nature associated. Okay. So that is why if you see the name of the chapter, it is dual nature of radiation. The radiation that we are trying to talk about is electromagnetic radiation and matter. Matter is something which occupies space. Are you guys able to understand? So light exhibits dual property. And it depends on the property that you're supposed to use depends on the phenomenon that you're trying to explain. If suppose you're trying to explain the phenomenon of interference diffraction, we need to use the wave property of light. If you're trying to explain the photoelectric effect, we need to use the concept of particle nature of light. So in this chapter, our main interest of study will be about photoelectric effect. Okay. So let's see what are all the topics that are covered in this chapter. This is a very, very small chapter. Concentrate, okay. So first thing will be about the introduction, which I've already given. Second is electron emission. The third concept that we will see is photoelectric effect, the one which I told you. The fourth one that we are going to see is experimental study of photoelectric effect. That is, we will do certain experiments to analyze how the photoelectric current is varying with respect to certain parameters. Then we have photoelectric effect and wave theory of light. Then we'll study about Einstein's photoelectric equation. Then we'll study about what is a photon. Then we'll come to the wave nature of matter. Till here, we'll be discussing about the particle nature of radiation. Then we'll discuss about the wave nature of matter. That is exactly the reverse. So when wave can exhibit particle property, why not a particle exhibit wave property? That we will see when that particular topic comes. Okay, all these things you would have learned in your 11th chemistry. It is going to be easy and you can easily connect it. This Davison and Germer experiment is not there in your syllabus. Okay, so let's get started. So as I told you, I'll just read out certain points. So if you look at the introduction of dual nature of matter, the true nature of light is difficult to assess. Experiments showed that light exhibited wave-like properties of diffraction and interference. On the other hand, photoelectric effect indicates that light has the aspects of particle photon with both energy and momentum. So thus, light had wave-particle duality. The wave-particle duality was extended to particles as matter waves. That was done by, so the name is read as de Broglie. Okay, people would have learned it as de Broglie. It's read as de Broglie. Okay. His theoretical study on the nature of particles and waves led to the invention of new mechanics of particles called as quantum mechanics. So this is the base for quantum mechanics. Anyway, we are not going to get into much details of quantum mechanics. So the main concept I want you to understand is, depending on the phenomenon, light will exhibit dual nature. Okay. Now comes the important concept, because photoelectric effect was the one which started explaining the particle nature of light, right? So now we'll see what electron emission means. So what do you mean by electron emission? Name itself is suggesting. So emission means something coming out, emitting. So what is getting emitted? It is electron. Now let's revisit the basics of atomic structure. So you know that atom is made up of a central part called nucleus. Nucleus consists of what? It consists of protons and neutrons, and the electrons revolve in the outermost orbit. Right? So if you want an electron to get emitted from this particular surface, first question is, what kind of a material is it supposed to be?
A conducting material.
Metal.
It has to be a metal. Yes, it has to be a conducting material. It has to be metals, because only in metals the electrons are loosely bound because of the number of valence electrons. Right? So free electrons can normally escape. So you're going to use a metal surface. Now comes the next question. So if you use a metal surface, is it possible for you to remove the electron just like that from the surface?
Energy
No,
is
sir.
So we need to supply some energy, right? That's what the point says. However, the free electrons cannot normally escape out of the metal surface. Rather, what should happen? We need to supply some energy in the external form so that the electron absorbs it and gains sufficient energy to overcome what? To overcome the electrostatic attraction that is existing between the nucleus and the outermost electron. Is that clear? Say, suppose without supplying any energy, if the electron attempts to come out of the metal surface, then what will happen? The metal surface will acquire positive charge and it will pull back the electron into itself. Right? If the electron just like that tries to come out with its own energy, that's not going to be possible. Right? So all these things I explained. Free electron is held inside the metal surface by what? Attractive forces. So from this, it is clear that electron can come out of the metal surface only if it has got sufficient energy to overcome the attractive pull. Right? So there is a name for it. A certain minimum energy is required to be given to an electron to pull it out from the metal surface. Can someone tell me what is the name of that energy?
threshold energy.
Threshold energy. Threshold.
So we can either call it as threshold energy, or the technical name for it is work function. So people know this already, right? So that's the next topic, that is work function. So how do we define work function? I see work function is written as W naught, or some books write it as phi naught. Okay. So in this chapter, if you see either of the symbols, that is with reference to the concept of work function. So what is work function? The minimum energy required by an electron to escape from the metal surface by overcoming what? By overcoming the electrostatic attraction that is existing between the electron and the nucleus. So it is generally denoted by phi naught, and the units for it is electron volt. Okay. So work function is also energy. For energy, generally, what is the unit?
Joules.
Joules.
Generally joules, correct. But here we will be using electron volt. That is, in the case of atomic physics and nuclear physics, we will be measuring all the energy values in terms of electron volts. Now comes an important question. If you are saying that the SI unit of energy is joule, then how many electron volts is equal to 1 joule? That is the question. Right.
10
So,
1.6 into 10 to
1.6
the power of
3.6 into 10 power.
okay, that's the right value. But how did you get it? So for that, we need to understand the definition, right? Can someone tell me if you know how you got it? So electron volt, right? So if at all I have two plates which have a potential difference of 1 volt. Okay, I have two plates which has a potential difference of 1 volt. If I keep an electron in between them, then what is the work done on the electron to move it from the negative to the positive plate? Work done is equal to charge multiplied with potential difference. Where did we see this?
Electrostatic.
electrostatic.
There's also nothing but the electrostatic potential energy. So here the charge that you're trying to move is an electron. So we know that work done is equal to charge into potential difference. So that is why we call it as electron volt. What is the charge of an electron? It is 1.602 into 10 power coulomb into, you are moving it across a potential difference of 1 volt. That will be 1.602 into 10 power minus 19. Coulomb into volt is what is joule. So that is why it is 1.602 into 10 power minus 19. This is the reason. So if you see, it comes from the basic of what? Electrostatic potential energy. I hope it is clear.
Yes, sir.
So I've written it here. 1 electron volt is the energy gained by an electron when it has been accelerated by a potential difference of 1 volt. That is why 1 eV is equal to 1.602 into 10 power minus 9. So as I told you, this unit of energy is commonly used in atomic and nuclear physics. Okay. So with respect to electron emission, we need to know what is the definition. After that, we need to know the term work function. Then we need to know what is the unit of work function. That is what we have completed. Is this point clear, guys? Okay. So next, there are certain important points related to work function. So it says the work function depends on the property of the metal and the nature of its surface. Because why we are saying property of the metal is because each metal is going to have different valence electrons. Depending on it only, we can talk about the work function of that particular material. So the values of work function are given in the table. This table I picked it up from NCERT only. Okay. So the different metals are given and their work functions are given in terms of electron volt. You need not memorize it. All these values will be given in the exam. If at all when they frame a question, when they speak about the metal, that particular work function will be given to you. You need not worry. Okay. So these values are approximate as they are very sensitive to surface impurities. So from the table, you can find out which has the highest and which has the least work function. So least work function implies it can exhibit photoelectric effect or it can undergo electron emission easily. Okay. So we saw what are electron emissions, right? So we are going to see what are the types of electron emission depending on the type of the energy you are going to supply, depending on the nature of the energy that is being supplied. We can speak about electron emissions as different types like thermionic emission, field emission, and photoelectric emission. So what do you mean by thermionic emission? The name itself is suggestive. You break it into two parts. Therm refers to heat, ionic is derived from ion. Right? If you supply sufficient amount of heat energy for the electron to escape out of the metal surface, then we call it as thermionic emission. Similarly, field emission. So what do you mean by field? Which field are you going to supply? So the field that we are going to supply here is electric field. That is, if you are able to place a metal, if you are able to subject a metal to sufficient amount of electric field, okay. So if you are able to expose it to a strong electric field, then if the emission takes place, that kind of an emission is called as field emission. Third, photoelectric emission, which is going to be our interest of study. So photo here refers to light because it is derived from the term photons, which we will see later. So light, and electric refers to charges. So electric means charges. Many of them think it is current. No, electric means charge. Okay. So when light of suitable frequency, because why we are talking about frequency is because if you know the frequency, you can speak about the energy of that particular light. So when light of suitable frequency illuminates means it is going to fall on a metal surface. Electrons are emitted from the metal surface. So these that is light generated electrons are called as photoelectrons. Okay, this is a term which we will be repeatedly using. It's called as photoelectrons. And this phenomenon is called as photoelectric effect. Okay. Shall I proceed, guys? So with the hope that you already know these basics, I'm going a little fast. If there is anything which is unclear, please stop me. Okay. The next question is, who observed this photoelectric effect for the first time? It was the scientist named Heinrich Hertz. Okay. So the phenomenon of photoelectric emission was first discovered in the year 1887 by Heinrich Hertz. So what exactly he was trying to do is, so there is a scientist named Maxwell. We didn't discuss this in electromagnetic waves because it was removed. Because there is a concept called displacement current based on which there are certain equations. So Maxwell was the person who came up with the concept of electromagnetic waves. And he gave certain equations. Okay. So to prove the existence of electromagnetic waves according to Maxwell. So going with the theory of Maxwell, Hertz wanted to prove that electromagnetic waves existed. So for that, what he wanted to do is, he wanted to generate he wanted to generate the electromagnetic wave, transmit it and receive it. So what did he do? He generated, he transmitted, and he could receive it. So important point to be noted here is, did he succeed or not? Yes. He did succeed in this particular experiment. But in addition to this, he also observed that there were certain negatively charged particles that came out of the metal surface when light of suitable frequency was falling on it. Okay, so this is what he observed. Light shining on the metal surface somehow facilitated the escape of free charged particles, which we now know as electrons. At that point, they didn't know. Some particles came out, that's it. Okay. That is, when light falls on the metal surface, some electrons near the surface absorb enough energy from the incident radiation to overcome the attraction of positive ions in the material of the surface. After gaining sufficient energy from the incident light, the electrons escape from the surface of the metal into the surrounding space. Okay. So, if you see this particular concept alone, it is not from an exam point of view, it is for you to know who has actually formed it and what exactly has happened. I hope it is clear, guys. It's a very, very crisp explanation. I hope it is clear.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
So from here, the important concepts start. Okay. So what did Hertz do? He observed something like this happening, right? When light was absorbed by certain metal surfaces, he could observe some particles came out of it. Right. But we need to experimentally prove that also, right? To experimentally prove that there were two scientists, that is Hallward and Leonard. They performed an experiment to actually show the phenomenon of photoelectric effect. Again, this diagram is also taken from your textbook. Okay. So you need to concentrate here, because based on this experimental setup and the study only, we are going to discuss all other properties. So concentrate, okay? So what they did is, they investigated the phenomenon of photoelectric emission in detail during the year 1886 to 1902. Okay. So what they observed is, listen to this carefully. When ultraviolet radiations were allowed to fall on the emitter plate of an evacuated glass tube consisting of two metal plates, certain phenomena were observed. Okay. Now I'm not going to read out every point that is there. I'm going to use the logic to understand what is the kind of circuit they built. Okay. Now let's think of the logic is. So what did they want to actually show? They wanted to show the effect of they wanted to show the photoelectric effect. So for photoelectric effect to happen, we know that electron emission is necessary, and electron emission is going to be by metals. So if you take the plate C, which is technically called as a photosensitive plate, we call it as photosensitive plate because it is sensitive to light. Okay, so this one should be a metal. Right? What metal and all, we'll think about it later. It should be a metal. So when light is made to fall on this metal, light having sufficient amount of energy is allowed to fall on this metal, what should happen? Electrons are supposed to come out of it. But let's logically see. Actually, I don't know why he built all these things. It is not necessary, right? For you to observe this phenomenon, you don't need all these things. You could have just dropped light on a photosensitive plate. You could say that electrons have come out. But what are they trying to achieve by adding all these extra components? Can you guys think about it?
To make sure whether it is electrons, they'll measure the flow of current in the circuit.
That's right. That's right. So the particles came out, right? Logically think, when something is going to fall, when collision is taking place, do you think all the particles will come out in an aligned path? Let's logically think about it. It's not going to happen, right? When something is falling on a photosensitive plate, when light is falling on it, the electrons are going to get scattered. But yes, they are going to have some sufficient energy to overcome what? To overcome the electrostatic attraction by the nucleus. So they will not go back, but they will have some sufficient amount of energy in the form of kinetic energy. Yes, they will come out, but they will have random motion. Okay. So the electrons which have come out, they need to pass through a material which is an evacuated glass tube. Why are we using an evacuated glass tube? Evacuated means inside it is vacuum. Nothing is there inside. Why are we using it?
To make sure that the electrons do not escape out of the system.
That is there.
They move in an organized pattern, not in a random.
That is also
Increase
there.
the speed.
Most important thing is, we do not want these electrons to undergo collision with any other particle. If suppose there was air medium inside, then what would have happened? The electrons would have undergone collision with whom? All the air molecules. Right? Since we don't want that to happen and we need to generate an aligned pattern of all these electrons, we are creating an evacuated glass tube. Right? Everything has a logic, right? Then we are placing an anode. Generally, see here is cathode, and we are placing an anode. Anode is going to be a positively charged plate. Why are we using an anode? We need to think about this, right? Why are we? Let's first think of why we are using this, then we'll see what is the setup. See, this part of the circuit you need not worry. As of now, let's think only about the glass tube and light source. Okay, I'll give you a hint. What is the nature of the particles that are coming out of the photosensitive plate?
Negatively charged, so they'll go in a
Negatively
fraction.
charged.
Since they are negatively charged, I told you one important point. They will come out randomly in some direction with sufficient amount of energy. Right? They will come out with sufficient amount of energy to ensure what? To ensure that they are able to overcome the electrostatic attraction of the nucleus. But the question is, we don't know whether they have sufficient amount of energy to constitute to current. Right? So generally, whenever you talk about a circuit, when is the circuit said to be complete?
Switch is closed.
So this kind of a circuit is open circuit because the current will flow, but it will not be able to complete a loop. Whereas when I close it, what is going to happen? It will form a loop. So current is said to be complete only when the charged particles are in a complete loop. If that should happen, we need to ensure that the electrons that are coming out are being rightly pulled towards the positive plate. That is why we use an anode. This anode potential plays an important role in all the observations that we are going to do. I hope you're able to understand all the logics, right? So this is the idea behind the design of this particular circuit. This commutator and all, let's not worry about it. Okay. So the remaining story is here. I'll put this document in the study materials in app. You can go through it. So I've explained the major part. Right? So now let's try to understand the story. So what will happen when the source that was used was ultraviolet radiation. When these ultraviolet radiations fall on the metal surface, the electrons will come out. The electrons which have come out are being pulled towards the anode by supplying positive energy to the positive potential to the anode. This is how the circuit is able to get completed. Okay. So from this whole context, can I say something like current is constituted in the circuit? Can I say this, guys? So there is current that is constituted in the circuit. If you observe, we have not used any wires inside. We have not used any wire inside the tube. Between cathode and anode, there is no wire. What is actually flowing? The photoelectrons are actually flowing. Right? So when they are able to flow, they'll go to the positive plate. They'll be able to complete a loop. They'll be able to complete a loop and come back to this point. Hence, current is constituted in it. This current, which is constituted due to the electrons that have got emitted due to the photoelectric effect, or called as, is called as photoelectric current, or we simply call it as photocurrent. Okay, this is another important term you need to have in your mind. We either call it as photoelectric current or photocurrent. Am I clear till this point? So if you read the whole story, you'll be able to see only 2 points repeatedly. Sufficient energy, sufficient frequency. So all those things, if you read, you will understand. But the logic for the circuit is not given. Okay, there are certain, so all these points you need to go through. So next is, we learned something called as minimum energy that is required for the photoelectrons to come out. That is called as work function. Right? In a similar way, there is a concept called as threshold frequency. So what do you mean by threshold frequency, guys? It is the minimum frequency of the source where it is able to knock the electrons from the metal surface. This is what is called as threshold frequency. Okay. So is this clear? Is this experimental part clear?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now comes an important topic which is called as characteristics of photoelectric. Okay. In physics, characteristics means variation of one value one physical quantity with another, with respect to another. With respect to another. So here in this characteristics of photoelectric effect, what we are going to see is how the value of the photoelectric current is varying with respect to three important parameters in the experiment. Okay, so for photoelectric effect to take place and photocurrent to exist, even without looking at the next point, you guys tell me what are all the required data, what are all the changes you can do to the experiment to make them succeed or fail. One is the most important for photoelectric effect is light. Correct? So there are two important parameters related to light. The two important parameters related to light which are going to change the value of photoelectric current are intensity and frequency. Because these are the two words we will be using. Till now we had been using the word frequency, and you people know what is intensity. In the previous chapter we discussed the extent to which the light is bright or dark is going to speak about its intensity, right? And the third most important parameter is the potential of the anode. So how many variables are there? Intensity, frequency, and potential of anode. So there are three important parameters which are going to decide what? Which are going to decide the value of the photoelectric current. That is what we meant by characteristics. So that is what we meant by characteristics of photoelectric effect. I will just show you the headings first, then we will discuss each. So if you see the first topic, it is the effect of intensity of incident radiation on photoelectric current. Second, we will study about the effect of potential difference on the photoelectric current. And third, we will study about the effect of frequency on stopping potential. What the stopping potential is, I'll explain it later. But you people give me a confirmation. Did you guys understand what exactly characteristics of photoelectric effect mean?
Yes, sir.
So the frequency is threshold frequency.
No resonance frequency. It is the frequency of the incident radiation. Did you ask resonant frequency by any chance?
No, sir, threshold or
Threshold. No, it's not the threshold. It's a normal frequency. We'll not be talking only about the threshold. What will happen if you increase the value beyond threshold? Also, we need to understand. No? See,
okay.
try to understand this. Threshold frequency, photoelectric effect will surely happen. That is the meaning of threshold frequency. What will happen if you increase the frequency beyond threshold frequency? Are you going to increase the photoelectric current or will it decrease? That's what we need to see. Or is it going to be constant? That is what is called as variation. Okay. So let's go one by one. Let's go one by one. See, effect of intensity. As I've already told you, you guys tell me. There is a photosensitive plate. I've kept a torchlight here. Okay. Can I say more intensity is falling on this? Okay, I'll take it. I'll put a comparative study. So first position, second position. In which position is the intensity of the light that is falling on the plate is more?
Second position.
First one.
It is first. Because for intensity to be more, the light should be as close as possible to the photosensitive plate. Okay. So here, what are the three important parameters I told you? Intensity, frequency, and
Potential of anode.
intensity, yes, frequency and the potential. Okay. See, generally, whenever you're studying characteristics of anything, of any characteristics from any experiment, then variation of one variable will take place and the other two will be kept constant. See, the best characteristic I can tell you is Ohm's law. Okay, for every characteristic, you will draw a graph. So in Ohm's law, what do? We draw the graph between I and V. This is what we do. So what does Ohm's law state? V is equal to IR. But is it applicable under all conditions?
No, sir.
What should be the value? V is equal to IR, provided?
Constant temperature.
Yes. So when you draw a graph, it will come out like this. Till now, we would have never discussed saying that this is the VI characteristic of Ohm's law. Why I am calling it as VI characteristic is I am seeing the variation of potential difference and current at what condition? At constant temperature. So whenever you're doing any experiment, okay, whenever you're using the word characteristic, no? Not only here, the reason I'm stressing is because this word characteristic is used in many places in physics. So wherever you see characteristic, you need to have something in your mind that when you're trying to vary one parameter, the other has to be kept constant. In a similar way, in the first characteristic, you are varying which parameter? You are varying the intensity. So what should be kept constant? You should keep the frequency and potential to be constant. Potential of whom? You need to keep the potential of the anode constant. Okay. So what do you mean by keeping the frequency constant? The meaning of it is, if suppose you are using green light for this particular photoelectric emission to take place, throughout the experiment, you are allowed to change only the intensity of it. You are not allowed to change the green light itself. So if you're using green light, you need to use green light only throughout. Only thing is, if this is the photosensitive plate, you can either bring the green light closer or you can take it away to vary the intensity. In a similar way, if the anode is given a potential difference of 5 volt, it should be kept constant. Okay. So when this is happening, we don't have any mathematical expressions here. Okay. Everything is an observation. The values were taken and graph was plotted. That's it. So effect of intensity. So I'm reading out certain points. Listen to this. So keeping the frequency of the incident radiation and the potential difference between the cathode and the anode as constant values, the intensity of the incident radiation is varying. Okay. By varying this, what we are going to do is we are going to make a note of the corresponding photoelectric current, which is measured using a microammeter. Okay. So once you make, it is clearly understood that the photoelectric current increases linearly with the intensity of incident radiation. Means if you increase the intensity of incident radiation, the photoelectric current will also increase in proportion with it. That is the meaning of it. You have to understand, guys. So when you're drawing the graph, in all the graphs, we will ensure that the photoelectric current is on the y-axis because that is a varying quantity. That is a dependent quantity. What is independent quantity? The independent quantity is intensity of it, right? And this is a graph. Okay, this one also I took it from your textbook. This figure 11.2. That is variation of photoelectric current with intensity of it. Clear, guys? So here, one important point to be noted is, since photoelectric current is directly proportional to the number of photoelectrons emitted per second, because number of photoelectrons emitted per second is like this: n into E divided by T. N into E is what? Q. Q divided by T is what? Current. So photoelectric current is directly proportional to the number of photoelectrons emitted per second. It implies that the number of photoelectrons emitted per second is also directly proportional to intensity of incident radiation. Meaning, if you increase or decrease the intensity, you can increase the number of photoelectrons per unit time. You can either increase or decrease the number of photoelectrons per unit time. Am I clear, guys? Am I clear?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So that is the first characteristic that we have studied. Okay. Second characteristic. Okay. So the second characteristic, it is a very, very, very important one, and it will be slightly. You need to concentrate more. Okay. I'm going to use certain terminologies. Concentrate. So here, if you see effect of potential difference on the photoelectric current. So here, what is varied? Here, what is
Frequency
varied?
and intensity.
Frequency and intensity are kept
Potential
constant.
difference.
Yes, it is a potential difference that is varied. Potential difference between whom? Between the cathode and the anode. Okay. So for a given metallic surface C, here C refers to photosensitive plate. Everything I'm writing here is with reference to the experiment which I showed you guys. The tube is there, no? In the tube, C refers to the photosensitive plate and A refers to the anode. Okay. For a given metallic surface, if suppose you are using any particular metal here, you will not change that metal throughout this experimental process. That metal will be kept constant. Okay. And you will keep the intensity and frequency of the incident radiation constant, and we will study the effect of potential difference between the plates to understand how it is varying. Okay. So even before I show this diagram, let us think of one logic. This one I'll show you separately. Okay. Concentrate, guys. So unlike the previous graph, if you see the previous graph, the previous one was drawn only for the first quadrant. Here we'll not draw it only for the first quadrant. Here we will draw it for the first and the second quadrant, where on the x-axis we will take the potential of anode. Okay, we will take the potential of anode. So here what is kept constant? Intensity and frequency are constant. Okay. So when the potential of the anode is 0, so what is taken on y-axis? It is photoelectric current. Okay. Now I'm going to put certain questions. Think before you answer. Okay. See, I have a photosensitive plate C, and anode is there, where anode is given. Here I'm talking about potential of anode only. So concentrate. Here I'm saying anode is given 0 volt, means it is not connected to battery at all. Okay. There is some light of sufficient frequency, that is threshold frequency is satisfied, and sufficient intensity that it is able to knock the electrons out of the surface. Okay. If the position and the frequency are chosen in such a way that photoelectric effect is taking place. Now, can I say when the potential is 0, the graph will be like this? When you increase it to 1 volt, the photoelectric current is going to increase. So can I say that the graph will be something like this? Tell me yes or no.
Yes, sir.
Right? So this is going to be the graph, right? But this is wrong. This is the point where we miss. Concentrate, okay? Concentrate, everybody. So by me taking the graph from 0, what am I trying to say?
Potential of anode is 0.
So I'm trying to say when there is no anode potential at all, I'm saying that there is no photoelectric current. But the answer to that is wrong. Why?
Because electrons are ejected out.
Because the electrons have already come out. No, the electrons have already come out because of the frequency and the intensity. This is the important point many people miss. You're able to understand. See, look at this. The graph will not start from the origin, whereas the previous graph will start from the origin. Because if there is no intensity, if there is no light that is falling on the plate, there is no question of photoelectric current. Whereas here, if the light of sufficient frequency has fallen, irrespective of whether anode potential is there or not, you can definitely observe some amount of photoelectric current. Are you guys able to understand? Please make a note of this. Don't do this mistake, okay? So it will start somewhere from here. So it will start somewhere from here. So it will increase, okay? And as you keep increasing the accelerating potential, that is the potential of the anode, as you keep increasing, see, when it was 0 volt, what would have happened is maybe this electron would have not had sufficient energy to reach this. Let's say if 10 electrons are coming out, maybe 9 of them didn't have, but at least there will be 1 electron which has sufficient energy to reach the anode, even without giving a potential to it. Now, if you increase it to 1 volt, what will happen? Out of the 9 electrons which initially failed, maybe 5 or 6 will try to go to that. You're able to understand, guys, because this 1 volt will be sufficient enough maybe to pull 5 electrons towards it. If I increase it to 2 volt, what will happen? Some more electrons would have got attracted, right? So as a result of which, is the photoelectric current increasing or decreasing? When you increase the accelerating potential, that is the positive charge on the anode, is the photoelectric current increasing or decreasing?
Increasing.
Increasing. Till what? So this will happen, and experimentally it was observed, after a certain point it will reach saturation and it will be constant. Observe. This is a part of the graph I'm trying to explain. Is that clear, guys? Okay. So let's say this is happening with a light of intensity I1. If I increase the intensity slightly greater than this, what would have happened? Then initially itself, the photoelectric current would have been slightly higher than the previous value. So what I'm trying to do here is, I'm not changing the frequency. I'm not changing the intensity also. Intensity in the sense, once I fix the light at a particular position, I'm not going to move it. Is this point clear? If there is any point that is confusing you, please ask. So I assume it is clear, right?
Yes, sir.
Now, why the graph is actually broken into two parts is observe now. Here comes the important point. So what did I say? A is the anode, or it is sometimes called as the collector plate also, because it is collecting all the electrons that are coming towards it, right? Now tell me one thing. The electrons are coming out from the photosensitive plate. You have the plate A here. So you have a cathode here. Now tell me, what would happen if I give negative charge to plate A instead of positive charge? That is why a commutator is actually used. Commutator is mainly used for this experiment. You would have heard what a commutator is, right? It is a device which is used to change the polarities. Okay, I'll tell you why negative charge is given, but you people think and tell me. Instead of giving positive charge to the plate A, what if I had given a negative charge to plate A? What would have happened?
Would have rippled.
Ripple.
So,
Current, there will be no current.
yes.
Oh, current.
It is, let's say, we should not say that no current will take place. See, the electrons are coming out, right? Let's say initially when it was 0, we know where the graph started. Correct? Now, instead of giving it plus 1 volt, if I give it minus 1 volt, what would have happened is, the electron, let's say it has sufficient amount of energy, okay? I told you the energy we have will be in the form of kinetic energy. Let's say out of the 10 electrons, there is one electron which is having sufficient amount of kinetic energy to overcome this resistive force or the repulsive force, to overcome the repulsive force to reach this plate A. You're able to understand?
Yes, sir.
So instead of saying one, let me say there are 5 electrons which have, for understanding purpose, okay? Let's say there are 5 electrons which have sufficient amount of kinetic energy to overcome what? To overcome the repulsive force that is exerted by plate A, and it is able to reach the plate A. Okay. So at that time, is the photoelectric current existing or not? It is.
Yes, sir.
It is existing,
Yes, sir.
but compared to the value 0, it will be slightly less. Observe the graph. I'm parallelly drawing it. So compared to the value 0, it will not go high. Okay, it will not go high. This will not happen. Rather, it will decrease. If I increase it to minus 2 volt, what would have happened? Maybe out of those 5, only 3 will be able to reach. As a result of which, can I say that the photoelectric current has further decreased? Am I right? So I increase it to minus 3 volt. What will happen? It will even more decrease. At minus 4 volt, I am able to observe that none of the electrons are able to reach whom? Reach the collector plate. Then what has happened? Y-axis is 0. What does y-axis represent? Y-axis is photoelectric current. So there is a particular potential, okay, because x-axis is potential. Can I say there is a particular potential? What potential? There is a particular negative potential at which you are able to completely cut off the photoelectric current. Are you guys able to understand that? Right. So this negative potential is what is called as stopping potential. Okay. So the next question that comes is, why are we even doing it? Right? Why are we even doing it? It is
Sir, your
because
voice is feeble, sir. Can you increase your volume?
minus 5 only. Now is it fine?
Yes,
Now is
sir.
it fine? So
Yes,
till
sir.
did you guys understand what stopping potential means? So stopping potential is that value of the negative potential which is given to the anode to completely cut off the photoelectric current. Is it clear? So the next question that is going to come is, why are we even doing it, guys? Why are we doing it? Why do we need to give a negative potential and torture those electrons? Why are we doing it? It is to calculate, listen, it is to calculate the kinetic energy of the electrons. It is to calculate the maximum kinetic energy of the electrons. Is it clear? I'll tell you. Look at the statement that I'm going to write. So do you guys know work energy theorem?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
So what does work energy theorem state? The sum of work done by all the forces in the system is equal to change in kinetic energy. So listen to it carefully. This explanation is not given in textbook. They've directly written the formula. Concentrate. The back end reason is this. So the sum of work done by all the forces is equal to change in kinetic energy. So here, work done by electrostatic repulsion is equal to change in kinetic energy. So what is the work done by the negative potential? It is E into V naught. Guys understand? E represents the charge of electron because the electron is what coming out. V naught represents what?
Stopping potential.
Stopping potential. So minus E into V naught. Why I am writing minus is because the electron has negative charge. When you're using work energy theorem, we need to use sign convention. So minus E into V naught is equal to change in kinetic energy. So because of the stopping potential, what is happening to the kinetic energy of the electrons? Or else I'll write it like this. Final minus Initial kinetic energy. Due to the stopping potential, what is happening to the final kinetic energy of the electrons? The name itself is telling you.
0.
Stopping, right? It is stopping the electrons. So 0 minus initially those electrons which could reach the plate A had maximum kinetic energy associated to them. Are you guys able to understand? So minus E into V naught is equal to minus half M into D max square. Means here our interest of study is to find out what is the electron which is having the maximum kinetic energy. That is why we are doing a negative test. You can find the strength of something only if you apply negative energy on it. Are you guys able to understand this point? So minus and minus will get cancelled. Now see, if I need to calculate the kinetic energy, what do I need to calculate? Half is a mathematical term. You know what is the mass of the electron. But is it practically, I'm repeating it, is it practically possible for you to calculate the velocity of each electron inside the tube?
No, sir.
No, sir.
Not do it. But E into V naught is easy for us to do. Because V naught is a stopping potential that we are applying it. You will be able to see it in the voltmeter. And you know the charge of electron. So if you just find out what is E into V naught, you're indirectly finding what?
V max.
Kinetic.
You're indirectly
Change.
finding the, yes. You're indirectly finding the maximum kinetic energy that the electrons had. Is that clear? So that is the reason why we are doing this negative test. Many of them think, why are we actually doing it? It is an indirect process to do this. Okay. Similarly, if you observe this graph, the stopping potential for the particular material is going to be a constant, irrespective of what? Irrespective of the intensity of light that you are going to use. So, what will happen is, yeah.
Sir, we are finding the maximum kinetic energy only when we are applying the negative potential.
Yes, you can. That is the only way to do it. No? That is the only way to do it. No other option is there.
Yes, sir. Okay.
Okay. So one last important point I would like to mention here is stopping potential is independent of what? See, all these points I'm telling you are 1 mark questions. Which they can ask you. No, yeah. Stop. It is independent of the intensity. Because the I1, I2, and I3 are changing what? Are changing the saturation current, but they are not able to change the stopping potential. Means all the graph in the leftward direction will come and meet at the same point. So this is what is going to happen. Okay. So anyways, what I suggest is I would suggest you guys to read the theory. This theory is clearly explained here. It is clearly explained. I put all these points so that you read it clearly, read it with a little bit of patience, okay? It will be confusing. Don't give up. So read, if there is any doubt, I'll clear it in the next class. Maximum by next class, we can actually complete this time because that's small. We have already completed 14 pages. Okay. So any other doubt, guys?
No, sir.
Okay. Just wait for a minute. Don't leave.